This meeting is being recorded.
We all set? Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to continue on today for our Tuesday, September 26, 2023 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting and public hearing. Call this meeting to order. If you'll all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Attorney Garcia, do we have certification of the agenda today?
Yes, sir, you do. The County Attorney's Office has reviewed the item on the agenda, and proper notification publication has been completed, and you have jurisdiction over the matter.
Great. Do any commissioners have disclosures for items on this agenda?
I have none, thank you.
No, sir.
And I have none either. With that, we'll move to item 2, our land use meeting agenda items. There are no items under this category today. So we'll move on to item 3, our public hearing agenda items. And we do have a 3A, the Highlands Ranch Preliminary Plan number 112A, first revision, project file SB 2023-015. Brett Thomas presenting for staff. Hi, Brett.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brett Thomas representing Planning Services. The project before you is Highlands Ranch Preliminary Plan 112A, first revision, project number SB 2023-015. Daniel Jennings with Norris Design is the project representative. Douglas County School District is the owner and is represented today by Rich Cosgrove. The applicant proposes 48 residential lots, 1 tract, and associated public roads on 10.84 acres within the Highlands Ranch PD. The intent of the preliminary plan is to provide an in-depth analysis of the proposed subdivision, including a review of the design considering the ability to obtain water and sanitation, identify geologic hazards, environmentally sensitive areas, wildlife habitat areas, source of required services, vehicular and pedestrian circulation, storm drainage and water quality, relationship to surrounding land uses, and conformance with the master plan. The preliminary plan process begins with submittal of an application. Following a review period by referral agencies and the public, there are public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners. Correspondence was received from several nearby residents who primarily had comments regarding access, traffic, drainage, water supply, and land for parks. That correspondence is included in the staff report. All referral agency comments are outlined in the referral agency response report, as well as the referral response letters that are also attached to the staff report. The Planning Commission considered the applicant's request for approval at a public hearing on September 11th. The commissioners asked clarifying questions related to the traffic study, drainage improvements, and the process to replace fences on adjacent lots. 4 members of the public testified. 1 felt the project should be developed with uses other than single-family residential, while the other 3 noted concerns with fence replacement, loss of undeveloped land, increased traffic, and grading impacts. The applicant responded to questions by confirming grading on abutting lots would not be disturbed and rear yard fencing would be replaced. The traffic study was scoped through Public Works Engineering and found to be acceptable. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the preliminary plan, subject to 3 conditions proposed by staff by a vote of 6-0. The site is, or 6-1, sorry. The site is located in the northern portion of Douglas County on the west side of Highlands Ranch. The site is generally located south of Town Center Drive, approximately 1/2 mile west of its intersection with Lucent Boulevard. As seen on this aerial, Tract A is bound by Bitterroot Place on the north, Ironwood Street on the east, and single-family residential along Cactus Bluff Place on the south and west. Highlands Ranch Filing 112A was approved by the board in 1994. In 1997, the board approved the 34th Amendment to the Highlands Ranch PD, which converted previously zoned light industrial land north of this area to a residential use. In 1998, the board approved a replat, Highlands Ranch Filing 112A, Second Amendment, which vacated 49 single-family residential lots in public right-of-way to create Tract A for a school site. In 2021, the school district requested ownership of Tract A be transferred from the county to the school district so that it could be declared surplus property, no longer necessary for a school facility. And in November of 2022, the 77th Amendment to the Highlands Ranch PD was approved by the board to amend the boundary of Planning Area 43, increase the gross residential acreage, reduce the acreage of non-urban area, and increase the total dwelling units allowed within planning area 43 by 48 units. The applicant proposes 48 single-family lots on approximately 9 acres of the 10.84 acre site. The gross density of the proposed subdivision is 4.3 dwelling units per acre. The applicant proposes a design which includes approximately 1/4 acre tract A and 1 1/2 acres of public right-of-way. Local road access will extend off of Ironwood Street to the southeast. The application includes a request to vacate 4 feet of existing public right-of-way along Bitterroot Place and Ironwood Street and incorporate that acreage into the adjacent proposed residential lots. The additional 4 feet of public right-of-way was dedicated when the property was replatted as a school site. However, the streets were never widened to accommodate a school. Here's a view looking west into the site near the intersection of Bitterroot Place and Ironwood Street. Here's a view looking east into the site near the intersection of Cactus Bluff Avenue and Bitterroot Place. And here's a view looking northwest into the site near the intersection of Cactus Bluff Avenue and Ironwood Street. These are the approval standards for a preliminary plan, which are discussed in detail in the staff report. Should the board find that the approval standards for the preliminary plan are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in its motion. Condition number 1, a burrowing owl survey shall be performed if any earth moving will begin between March 15th and August 31st. Condition number 2, during construction activity within the development, the applicant, its successors, and assigns shall take all reasonable care to watch for historic resources, paleontological resources, and other cultural history resources, and shall immediately notify Douglas County and complete appropriate Colorado Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation data management forms in the event of such discovery. Condition number 3, technical corrections to the record copy of the preliminary plan exhibit shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And condition number 4, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public hearing and/or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. Section 405.08 of the subdivision resolution sets forth the parameters for the board's determination on preliminary plan request, as noted on this slide. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take questions at this time. In addition, Jacob Gable and Chris Martin with Public Works Engineering are present to answer any questions. And the applicant representative, Daniel Jennings, also is prepared to make a presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Brett. Any questions for staff?
I have none, thank you.
No questions.
I have none at this time. I'll ask the applicant to come up. Just if you want to state where you're from and who you represent, begin your presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Daniel Jennings. I'm with Norris Design, and my address is 1101 Bannock Street, Denver, Colorado. First off, we want to thank Brett for his presentation and for his efforts and the rest of county staff in working with us over the past year to prepare these plans to the point where we could bring them before you today. We'd like to acknowledge up front some of the stakeholders that we've worked with over the course of the development process. The Douglas County School District, who own the land and put it up for sale to be developed by our client, Miller United. And they, of course, have been part of the referral and review process. The Planning Commission, who, as Brett mentioned, recommended our application for approval a couple of weeks ago. This body, the Board of County Commissioners, who approved the property for sale by the school district back in February of 21, approved the PD amendment last November, and of course are reviewing our plans today as the current step in the application process. Centennial and Water and Sanitation District, the Area Water Authority, South Metro Fire Rescue, who have stated that they will serve the site. Highlands Ranch Community Association, who have verified that future development would be included as part of their community association, and our Westridge neighbors, who are an important part of the development process. And we've heard from them, had a few meetings, and really, you know, they've been integral to the development that we're proposing. I can't stress that enough. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. I want to introduce our project team that's here today. We have Rich Cosgrove with the Douglas County School District. They're the owner. We have Steve Schoflick and Scott Goldhammer with Miller United Real Estate. They are the applicant. Myself and my colleague, Ryan Kasirik, are planners with Norris Design. Ben Satterwhite and Brett Sminkowski with Harris Coker Smith. They are our civil and traffic engineers, respectively. And Eric Carlson with Foster, Graham, Milstein, and Kalisher. They are our project's legal counsel. So our entire team will be available to answer any questions you may have at the conclusion of our presentation. First off, we want to talk a little bit about who we are. Miller United Real Estate is a local real estate company, and they have a successful history of working in Douglas County, doing exactly the type of infill projects like the one we've brought before you today. In fact, they've done several projects that are similar in size and scope that we wanted to share with you. So this is the overlook at Cherry Creek, which is a neighborhood of single-family homes they did in Parker. Here's Crystal Valley West, a townhome development that they completed in Castle Rock. Canyon Village is a single-family neighborhood that is fully built and sold out, and it is located in Highlands Ranch, just like our project. Here's Cityscape at Highline, another recent single-family neighborhood that they also did in Highlands Ranch. And then the villages at Castle Pines, which they recently completed in Castle Pines Village. So we've had great success doing these types of residential infill projects in Douglas County. And so the Westridge project we've brought to you is really the perfect next project for Miller United. Miller United has an initiative of teaming up to give back to local nonprofits in the jurisdictions in which they work. And for this project, they have partnered with the Family Center of Douglas County, which is an organization that provides assistance to families in need. And so a portion of the proceeds from this project will go to the Family Center. Now to get into the details of our application, as you can see, our site is located in the Westridge neighborhood of Highlands Ranch. Our application is for a preliminary plan of 48 residential lots consistent with the land use of medium residential of the Highlands Ranch PD. And there's several reasons we feel that this merits your approval. First, the Douglas County School District selected this site for development, and this body approved a PD amendment last year so that the site could be developed with 48 lots consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. Second, this is a logical infill site in which to add similar residential lots served by the existing infrastructure that is already in place. And finally, our plan proposes lots and homes consistent with the character of the existing neighborhood. A quick recap of the history of our site. As you may recall, it was originally platted for 48 residential lots by Mission Viejo, the predecessor to Shea Homes. And as you can see on the plat, the lots on the site were designed as part of the larger single-family neighborhood, and all of those lots are built out as the neighborhood that you can see today, with the exception, of course, of our site, everything highlighted in yellow. As about 5 years later, the plat was amended and those 48 lots were removed so that the site could become an elementary school. However, that never came to be because the school district ultimately determined that a school was not needed at this location. And in early 2021, this board transferred the property back to the school district so that they could put it out on the open market for sale with the intent of generating revenues. It was in putting the property on the open market for development that my client, Miller United Real Estate, was selected as the buyer. And then last year, as the first step towards development of the site, this board approved an amendment to the PD, through the Highlands Ranch PD, to change the land use from elementary school to medium residential so that our site could be developed consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. So this is a closer look at that original plat from 1994 that divided the site into 48 lots. And this plat has really served as the inspiration for the proposed preliminary plan that we've brought you today. During the PD amendment process, the county staff had asked us to provide a conceptual plan as part of the zoning application. They just wanted to get a sense that with the zoning in place, what was our vision for how the site would develop. So we shared this conceptual plan during the PD amendment process, and it follows the basic layout of the original plat. There are 48 residential lots with an extension of Cactus Bluff Avenue passing through the site. However, after the zoning was approved, and we began to do in-depth engineering analysis in order to prepare this application, we realized that there was an intersection alignment issue at the northwest end of our site that would prevent a through street connection at that location. So here's a closer look at that intersection, and this kind of highlights the issue. So the dashed red line is the current alignment of Cactus Bluff Avenue as it meets Bitterroot Place. And then the pink outline is our site, and the blue are the surrounding existing lots. And so as you can see, the existing alignment of Cactus Bluff Avenue, that dashed red line, as it meets the intersection, it doesn't line up with our property. If you were to continue a street across Bitterroot Place at that location, it would pass about 10 feet south of our southern property line, so it would pass into the adjacent property. And what we learned was that this 10-foot offset of the intersection, well, it exceeds the county's allowable offset intersection to have a safe intersection. And what this meant was ultimately we could not continue a road through our site at this location as we had originally envisioned. So after we learned about the alignment issue, we met with the county engineers ahead of submitting this application, and they suggested that we revise our plan and remove the through road, and instead of having a through road, provide a cul-de-sac at the end of the Cactus Bluff extension into our site. So based on the county's direction, we put together this revised plan with the cul-de-sac instead of the street continuing through. And this is the plan that we submitted with our application, and we just thought it would be helpful to provide some background essentially as to what we were looking at conceptually during the zoning process, and then how we arrived at the actual layout that we submitted with our preliminary plan application. The intent of our application is to create a development that fits in with the surrounding neighborhood that our site was originally platted to be a part of. We're still proposing 48 lots consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. In fact, the average lot size of our proposed plan is actually over 10% larger than the average lot size of the 45 lots that surround our site. And the homes that we intend to build on the site will also be similar in quality and size to the existing homes on the site. We want to point out that we're proposing an infill development, which is a more sustainable form of development than greenfield development, because instead of building new infrastructure to serve the site, what we're going to be doing is improving the existing infrastructure that's already in place. And to that point, part of our work during the development process has been contacting service providers and making sure that there is sufficient existing infrastructure in place to serve the 48 residential lots. Our water authority, Centennial Water and Sanitation District, has indicated there is sufficient water to serve the development, and their analysis was further confirmed by the county's water consultant, Lytle Water Solutions. We know that water conservation, it's essential to developing in Colorado, and we intend on adhering to all of Centennial's best practices when it comes to conservation and following their approach of Colorado-scaping, using native species native to the high plains environment that aren't water intensive with our landscaping. We went out and acquired will serve letters from these service providers early in the process, and we've also received a letter of support from Shea Homes, the master developer of Highlands Ranch. All of these letters should be in your packet. Our application included a traffic study, a drainage report, a biological and cultural resources study, and of course our preliminary plan. We went through 3 rounds of review with the Douglas County Planning and Engineering departments. We went through 2 rounds of referral agency review. We took our plans before the Highlands Ranch Community Association's Development Review Committee and received their unanimous vote of approval. We've held 3 outreach events with our neighbors as part of this process. That brings our total number of outreach events to 10 throughout the life of the development process. And we took our application before the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago, and they recommended it for approval. And of course, we're here before you today as the current step in the county's review process. So where are we headed? Looking at the full development process for the site, as I mentioned earlier, the first step, our PD amendment, was approved last November. We're of course in the preliminary plan stage, and we hope to get through the final plat process this fall following approval of our current application. We know that you're charged with determining whether or not our application meets 10 specific approval criteria from the Douglas County subdivision resolution. We believe that we meet all 10 of the criteria, and this is something that's well covered in the staff report, so we're not going to go through each one, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have. But beyond just ensuring that we meet the required approval criteria, much of our team's efforts over the past year with this process, 2 years with the entire process, it's really been concentrated on communication with the surrounding neighborhood, listening to them, working to alleviate and address any concerns that they might have about development of the site. And as I mentioned, to date we've held 10 neighborhood outreach events. We heard from some of our neighbors at the Planning Commission hearing a couple of weeks back, and we've reached out to all of those individuals who spoke to follow up on their concerns. We're going to continue to be transparent with our neighbors, and we're going to continue our outreach efforts, hold more neighborhood outreach events as our project progresses, because we want to be a good neighbor. And now we'd like to share a little bit of what we've discussed with the neighborhood at those outreach events and at the Planning Commission hearing, and how we've worked to address those concerns. So first, we heard a lot about the importance of compatibility, and that really is the objective of our application. We intend to create a development that fits in and complements the surrounding neighborhood. And as we've mentioned, our plan proposes lots that are similar in size to the existing Westridge neighborhood. In fact, on average, they're slightly larger. Fitting in with the existing character of the neighborhood is also crucial. We intend to build homes that are similar in size and quality as the existing homes in the neighborhood. So on the top, you'll see some elevations of the existing homes on Bitterroot Place, and then below that, for comparison, are some of the conceptual elevations of the proposed homes that we would have on our site. One thing I want to point out here, it's just not very noticeable, but all of the proposed elevations, all of our proposed homes would have 3-car garages. It's just that in some instances, they're side-loaded garages as opposed to front-facing, but they're all 3-car garage homes, just like the existing homes in the neighborhood. This is along Ironwood Street. Again, very similar homes as we intend to maintain the character. And then along Cactus Bluff Place, again, intent is for our homes to complement the neighbors. We know, or you know as well as we do, that anytime you discuss a new development, neighbors are concerned about what this will mean for traffic in the area. And we've done a traffic study. We completed new traffic counts in April of this year at the request of the county. And those counts and the information that's documented in our traffic study indicate that with the addition of our proposed homes, the surrounding streets are going to remain well below the county's capacity standards for local residential streets, and therefore they will continue to function at a high level. And this makes sense when you think about it, because all of the road infrastructure that went in at the time of the final plat from 1994. So these streets were designed to accommodate residential development on the site. We want to talk a little bit about something we heard at Planning Commission. At that hearing, we heard from an area resident who lives along Cactus Bluff Avenue to the southeast of our site, a little further into the neighborhood. She asked that traffic counts be taken along her street, which was outside of the scope of the study that we agreed to with the county. And so even though it was beyond those requirements of our application, we understood her concerns. We wanted to satisfy her requests. So after Planning Commission, we immediately ordered up new traffic counts to be taken on her street. And the results of those traffic counts indicate that the street is currently functioning at 64% of the county's capacity standards for local residential roads. Our development is projected to add only 26 additional vehicles a day to Cactus Bluff Avenue, which would bring the percent capacity to 66%. So the impact of our development to traffic on Cactus Bluff Avenue is minimal. And the street's going to continue to function well below the county's capacity standards. And the reason that our site's not going to generate much traffic on Cactus Bluff Avenue is because nearly all of the trips out of our proposed development are going to head to Town Center Drive. So this is the projected trip distribution from our site, which is documented in our traffic study. And as you can see, only 5% of the inbound and outbound trips of our site are projected to take Cactus Bluff Avenue. The majority of the trips to and from our proposed neighborhood will be heading out of the neighborhood, either to the commercial uses in the area, or they'll be taking the major roadway corridors, regional roadway corridors like Santa Fe or 470. They're not going to continue through the neighborhood. But it was important to us that we do this traffic study and we send the information to the neighbor who requested it. We've done that this week, and we hope it provides some clarity regarding the traffic volume near her home and where the trips to and from our site are intended to head. Something else that we've heard from our neighbors and something else that was discussed at Planning Commission was the inadequate drainage facilities that exist in the neighborhood. And so this photo is an image from a flooding event that occurred at the southeastern end of our site, right at that intersection. And we want to take some time to talk about how we're going to help this situation out with the infrastructure that's going in with our plan. So this is the current drainage condition in the neighborhood. And as you can see with the red arrows, all of the existing storm flows are directed towards that intersection that flooded. All of the flows are directed towards those existing inlets. Our development is going to redirect some of those flows onto our site away from that intersection so that they can be conveyed through the added storm capacity that comes in with our development, and we believe that this is going to help improve the condition at that intersection. And finally, we share a fence line with our neighbors to the south along Cactus Bluff Place. And as a benefit to these homeowners, we're planning to replace the more than 1,300 lineal feet of rear fence line along the edge of our property. The HRCA reviewed and approved our request to replace the fencing as we proposed at their Architectural Review Committee meeting last Wednesday. And one of our neighbors on Cactus Bluff spoke at the Planning Commission hearing, and he raised a good question. He was concerned that if we replaced his fence, it would take his rear fence line, it would take his existing side yard fences out of compliance with the current HRCA regulations. So after we heard that at Planning Commission, we reached out to the HRCA about it, and they responded that in replacing the rear fence line as we have proposed, it's not going to create a conflict with the residential improvement guidelines, and therefore the homeowners are not going to be out of compliance with the HRCA regulations, and they would not have to replace any additional fence lines as a result of the new fencing that we plan to install. So in conclusion, beyond complying with the 10 approval criteria of the subdivision resolution, we ask that you approve our proposed preliminary plan based on the following. Our plan is consistent with the land use and standards of the Highlands Ranch PD. This is a logical site for infill development given the surrounding neighborhood and the existing infrastructure. The lots of our proposed development plan are equal in size and complementary to the surrounding neighborhood. The site was identified as a top priority site for development by the Douglas County School District, with proceeds going to generate revenues for the school district. And as I've just described, we have had extensive outreach with the surrounding neighborhood, listening to area homeowners and accommodating a number of their concerns, and we're going to continue to meet and discuss with them as our application progresses. Again, the site was originally platted with 48 lots, and it was designed as part of the existing neighborhood, and we've really worked hard to be a good neighbor and to propose a plan which meets the intent of that original plat, to fit in with and complement the character of the existing neighborhood. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Rich Cosgrove with the Douglas County School District so that he can speak about what this project means to the school district.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Richard Cosgrove, Chief Operations Officer, Douglas County School District, 620 Wilcox, Castle Rock, Colorado. Thank you for your time. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Commissioners for consideration of this project. Douglas County School District has and will always follow all land use rules and regulations. And I'd like to thank the Commissioners for the partnership with Douglas County School District. Starting in 2019, the district identified this site through our long-range planning committee as surplus in that it was not needed for capacity. And in order to use this site for productive purposes, pending all rules and regulations and approvals of Douglas County, and to generate one-time funds for the district, was to work with our realtor to sell this site and have all site development in a sound manner that would benefit the community. Right now, the district has almost $1 billion in capital needs, and the sale of this site would contribute greatly to our general fund for use as approved by our Board of Education and recommended by our superintendent. So I simply want to say thank you for your consideration. We do have growth needs in the district, but it is not in Highlands Ranch, and we do not need this site for future schools. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. Anything else from the applicant?
No, I would just say thank you for listening to us and allowing us to share our plans, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, great. And there were 4 conditions in the packet. Are you amenable to those 4 conditions? Do you accept those 4 conditions?
We do.
Okay, great. Let me open it up for any questions or comments from the board. You know, I'm not seeing my colleagues jump at this, but I'm looking at this and walking through the packet. Brett, can you bring up goal number 2.3 in the comprehensive master plan? And let's do 2.1 as well while you're going through that.
You said. Commissioner, you said 2.3?
2.1 and 2.3, please.
2.1, 2.3. So I'm not able to bring it up on this slide, but I could read it, if that
Okay,
works.
sure.
So 2.1, goal 2.1 is improve and enhance existing infrastructure, support healthy living, reduce vehicle miles traveled, maintain air quality standards, and conserve open space. Is that the correct one?
Yep. And then 2.3?
And then goal 2.3, provide connected parks, trails, and recreational facilities appropriate to the scale of the development.
Yeah, so as a former planning commissioner, I do appreciate this application coming forward. A couple reservations out of the gate. I think we asked the county attorney if this had been properly certified for the agenda, and I do find it somewhat misleading, although accurate. Highlands Ranch Preliminary Plan number 112A. I think the average citizen would think this is a application brought by Highlands Ranch, but it's Miller United Development, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so where and how would citizens know that it's Miller United Development that's bringing this application forward?
So all project titles are based on the legal description for preliminary plan. So that's where the Highlands Ranch title comes from. Courtesy notices are sent to all abutting landowners, so they would receive a notice that directs them to the project file. All files submitted are included in the project file. The application's in there, that's where Miller United would be referenced. The narrative also, I believe, references Miller United. The plans, I'm sure, reference Miller United also, but there was quite a bit of public comments received from the public, emails from the public, phone calls with the public.
Yeah, it seems kind of buried in the packet, but tough to find those items. I'll just say, this is unincorporated Douglas County, and, I raised a family in Highlands Ranch, and I greatly appreciate, Mission Viejo and Shea and all those that have been so actively involved in development in Highlands Ranch, but I honestly believe the last thing Highlands Ranch needs is more rooftops. and I'll just go on the record as saying that. I think there are areas of the county that do need that. I don't think this is one of them. We have worked actively with Rich Cosgrove and the Board of Education on a variety of properties that have not been used for over 20 years for any sort of financial return for the Board of Education, school district, and certainly have not been slated for development on any level. And so what has happened is you have a community that has relied upon an area that is in many ways their open space. It isn't their open space. They don't own it. We get that. But for over 20 years, it has been. It doesn't surprise me that you have a lot of citizens that are concerned about this. And in two areas in Douglas County, we identified and worked with the Board of Education to obtain those areas as open space or parks. Sweetwater Park in particular was one location that was slated for development. Board of County Commissioners worked to acquire that, convey it to South Suburban, and then City of Lone Tree then annexed. In my mind, that's a far better outcome for the school district. You get the same level of revenue coming in with partnership through the Board of County Commissioners. And again, Mr. Cosgrove, we appreciate the ongoing partnership. You've been a great partner to us, as has your board. But again, this seems like infill that is inconsistent with the comprehensive master plan. In my mind, this is far better suited for open space and parks in this community and not additional rooftops. And I think that's what we've heard from the citizens. Additional comments, questions from the Board of County Commissioners?
I'm interested in hearing citizen comment.
Okay, anything else from the board? Okay, with that, we'll open it up for any citizen comment, either in the room or online. Is there any citizen comment? Yes, ma'am. Sure, if you want to just come to the podium, state your name and where you're from, please.
Hi, thank you. My name's Heather Young. Live at 2701 Cactus Bluff, back up to the open space that we're discussing. I have a couple of I have one first question. As far as I know, HRCA has not approved the cap limit for these 48 homes. Is that correct? Does anyone know?
So what we'll ask you to do is just walk through your comments,
Okay.
and then staff can respond to any questions you have.
Which seemed to me makes all of this moot if they do not, because they've already reached that cap limit. No one in our neighborhood, nor anyone online, nor HRCA when I called seemed to be able to answer that question. Also, as far as there was a picture of the flooding on the far end of the circle there. I live on the other end. I have pictures of severe flooding from that same storm. So I have a little bit of concern when they're pointing the arrows coming down that same direction, that it's going to make our end worse. Also feels if the whole neighborhood meeting thing has been a little bit misleading. I've not received any notification, at least for the last couple. One stated, I believe, in July, and as recently September 20th. Never heard anything about that or received anything in relationship to notification on that. I did receive phone calls, though, 2 different phone calls from a gentleman saying he was with Miller United. Stated on there that they are the owners of the property currently in regards to replacing the fence because of our property backing to that, which seemed to me a little misleading and disingenuous because as far as I know that property is still owned by the school district. And then lastly, the water issue. Last month received a letter from Centennial in regards to the drought restrictions. Seems like there's some type of a conflict there. Either we're in a severe drought and the current homes are needed to be restricted in order to address that, or we're good and we can put in 48 more homes. It just seems like there's a direct conflict there between that. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Did we get her name?
Yep. Did you state your name?
Heather Young.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I thought I heard that. Any additional citizen comment from the room? Any citizen comment online?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. First person to comment will be Ashley. You're unmuted. Oh, one moment. Go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Just confirming.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Ashley Leader, living at 2501 Cactus Bluff Place. So our home backs up to where this open space is currently, or where the proposed building is potentially moving forward. Commissioners, you heard from us last time. You may remember me. My husband and I are starting to build a family, and when we last spoke to you all, we were experiencing some infertility, but glad to say I'm pregnant now, and we're expecting our first in December. So forgive me for not being in person. I'm actually on bed rest now. But thank you for allowing the opportunity to speak to you virtually. We really appreciate this. I would just like to echo Commissioner Layden's concerns about 2.1 and 2.3. It has been a bit confusing for citizens to know that this has been Miller United bringing this project forward. It has been misleading, looking like it's coming from Highlands Ranch. And I would like to reiterate that I agree. I believe that the last thing that Highlands Ranch needs is more rooftops. Our community has relied on this space as open space for over 20 years. And as we are building our family and planning to raise children here, myself and our community members would like to see this continue as a space that we can utilize as open space. I am interested in the Sweetwater project as an example. I'm wondering if perhaps the school district would entertain something like that moving forward, which might be better suited with a similar outcome, with the same amount of revenue going to the school district. If the ultimate goal in this is to support our community and support the school district, why can't that be on the table at this time? The neighborhood meetings have been a little bit misleading. We have met with some folks, but communication has been a little wonky. And I'm curious if there's been a survey of neighbors. Would the commissioners be interested in knowing how many of our community and citizens are in support of this or not in support of this, given this information? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Any additional citizen comment?
Yes, sir. Next will be Jeff Bullock. Jeff, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Just mic check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We sure can.
Thanks. Jeff Bullock. I'm at 2581 Cactus Bluff Place. My house backs up to the planned development. I'm actually right, I think, in the dead center of the street. So I just wanted to make two comments. One on the traffic study. I just think it's inaccurate that only 5% of the traffic will actually go up Cactus Bluff Avenue. I mean, being right in the center of Cactus Bluff Place, every time I leave, I can either choose to go right or left because it's kind of sixes either way. And if I'm going up towards Town Center or towards Home Depot, towards King Soopers, you always go up Cactus Bluff Avenue. You do not loop around to go to Town Center. And so I think the old saying of all models are wrong and some are useful really fits this case, because the reality is that there's going to be way more traffic going up Cactus Bluff Avenue than what the traffic study says. I mean, it's just it's the difference between a model and what is actually going to happen. So I think that's fairly inaccurate based on actual traffic patterns of people who will be coming out of the new development, since there's only one way out. And I guess my last comment is, I know there's been a lot of discussion around the four-way stop on the other side of the development. I would love and plead, if there is any way possible, to make it a through street. I guess I draw on experiences I have family who lives on the East Coast and all over the country, where there are literally no perfectly square four-way stops. And, if we're looking at a slight angle that will improve the traffic flow for Cactus Bluff Avenue and really the whole neighborhood area, there's got to be a way to make it work even at a small angle when in lots of places in Colorado and all over the country, like slight angles are the norm. So I'd appreciate to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Additional citizen comment?
I have no additional online comment.
Okay, thank you, Troy. And with that, I'll close citizen comment, bring it back to the board for any further discussion.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing from the citizens. I represent Highlands Ranch. I've lived in Highlands Ranch for 24 years. And I'm not opposed to more houses where there are parcels that can be built on. And I'd like to I have a question for Mr. Cosgrove, if you could come forward, if that's okay.
It is.
When I looked through the material that was provided to us, originally in 1994, this was planned for 48 homes. And then, was there some kind of a plan with the school? Would you know that they felt they needed another lot, or how did that change happen? Was that at the school district's request?
I can't answer that specifically because I don't have knowledge, but typically there's a master capital plan that has been published that shows the enrollment projections and the student generation and the growth in a community, and that would require either land or cash in lieu of land. So I would believe that at that time, the district approached Douglas County with a request for a school site.
I see. Well, thank you. I appreciate that information about what that process would be, because I know there are several of these sites that the school district is holding on to that are too small now for you to build a school on. And people believe that's their open space, but it's actually been set aside for the benefit of a school. So if you're not going to put a school on it, if you sell it to a developer, you get revenue off of it. And that's what you talked about earlier, is one-time funding. When the county sold those 2 parcels earlier for parks, the school district did not receive the same amount of revenue from the county turning it into a park as you would have from a developer. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, the revenue would be based on 1 or 2 appraisals for that property. And the appraisals are based on a highest and best use, and that highest and best use would basically result in a dollar amount. And open space or parks or commercial development, residential development, those are all highest and best uses. So the highest and best use would be based on the intent and the allowed zoning for that property. So those 2 sales were of a different value than a highest and best use for residential development.
So that was a lower value than what you could get from this selling it for development?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. I have no other questions for you, Mr. Cosgrove.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Do you have any questions?
I do. I still have some more. And these are for the developer. I looked on, it looks like you're also planning some ranches. They're not all going to be just 2 stories. Is that correct?
We don't have that information at the moment.
Okay. When I saw those drawings, it looked like there was at least 1 ranch on the bottom left. I just know that Commissioner Teal is doing an initiative for older adults in Douglas County, and I've piggybacked on most of those, and almost every single one of them, we have heard from people saying, I really want to downsize. I don't need this big 2-story house. I want a ranch-style house, but I want it still in Highlands Ranch so I can stay close to my family. So when I saw that picture, I thought that might be something that would accommodate some other needs that we have of our residents. So I don't have any other questions for you. I will just state that when you started your presentation, you talked about a development that was done at MacArthur and Quebec. That was an infill piece on Pax Christi Church property. And I live less than a mile from that. I drive by it every week, if not every day. And I do not see a significant difference in my neighborhood from having those 52 homes, I think, that were there. I know there was a lot of concern when the development was proposed, but now there is really no appreciative difference from that. And again, it's not open space property, right? It's space that the school had to put a school on it, and now they have the right to sell it for a higher use. So I am in favor of this development. I think it's a good thing. At the very beginning, you showed several projects that you have done in Highlands Ranch and in other areas where you have been able to take existing infrastructure and just use that for infill. And I really believe that the best thing we can do is develop these parcels now, because as housing becomes more and more necessary and the state becomes more and more involved in our regulations, I think now is a good time for us to have better control over what happens on our development and the outcome of what happens on those parcels. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Teal?
You know, a lot of kind of side topics have been introduced into this matter. You know, first and foremost, I mean, I hope Colonel Cosgrove will take back to his staff and to his board the fact that, you know, we do see changing demographics going on in the county, as he mentioned, and I would very much like to see a dedicated strategy from the school district to take some of these unused sites and indeed, you know, work with the board, program some of them for appropriate parks, program some of them for these infill developments, because I mean, I would like to see that capital freed for use by the school district to realign where we are building new schools. Obviously, that's a secondary factor into the matter before us. The question of what really is open space, what is park, what is recreational space. I guess my thoughts are, I like it when true open space of actual acreage that has a verifiable, manageable, and measurable benefit to natural resources and wildlife management is brought forward, whereas a piece of land that was planned for in residential development, just like this one, the use was then changed to be a school site, but then that school site never came about. That doesn't count as open space for me. That's no more than when we hear from residents, well, there's undeveloped land next door. I thought that was open space. Actually, that was just undeveloped land. And we hear that all the time. And that's what we have here. I'm very encouraged, quite frankly, by what I saw with the wastewater plan, which is one of the factors that we must take into consideration. And the fact that we had flooding in an intersection where the original plan did not have, had stormwater construction at least sketched out and at least roughly planned for. And that never happens, and then suddenly we have an intersection subject to flooding. That tells me that there was an original system designed that just never went anywhere. And if a school had been built there, I am sure the school district would have done their very best to mitigate that flooding and ensure proper drainage on the site. I do see this design providing that planning for proper drainage, and I do encourage the owner of this development to proceed once title is transferred, and that should definitely be a piece of infrastructure that is not shortchanged on, which, based on the plan provided, I do think so. So I don't know. I'm in favor of moving forward. I mean, Chair, if you need to entertain more discussion, I'm more than happy to go into the weeds on some of my further thoughts on this. But I'm prepared to have a motion put forward and voted on.
Well, thank you for that. Go ahead and make the motion if you'd like, and then we can entertain further discussion as part of that motion.
Well, if it please the board, I do have a motion to approve Highlands Ranch preliminary plan number 112A, first revision, because it does meet all the approval criteria with the 4 accepted conditions as presented. Project file is SB 2023-015.
And I will be seconding that motion because I believe this process, this application does meet all of the approval standards.
So we have a first and second on the floor. Any further discussion? I'll just add, this board has a long history of being very pro-development, pro-business, and we have a great relationship with the business community and with developers along the Front Range. We are not anti-growth here, but, I spent my life as a commercial land use attorney, and having raised a family in Highlands Ranch and now living in Lone Tree in my district in District 1, I would say philosophically this board oftentimes approves high density in the northern periphery of Douglas County and approves a ton of open space in your district, Commissioner Teal, where people from my district will never travel. They may do it on occasion, but where the citizens I represent and the citizens that Commissioner Thomas represents in Highlands Ranch, when they think about parks and open space, they're not thinking about traveling a half an hour or an hour south. They're thinking of 5 minutes, 2 minutes, something near where they live. That's why I really was so pleased with the work that this board did at Sweetwater and Tepfer to try to reclaim some public spaces for our citizens in areas that are already very high density. With all due respect to Commissioner Thomas, I still do get complaints about that Pax Christi development. And people ask me, who approved all that? And I always say, I didn't vote for it.
I did.
I know you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it passed and people are still complaining about it. So I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to add density to density. And I know I think the average citizen in my district and yours would say, create some parks, have some open space in our districts as opposed to having all the open space in Commissioner Teal's district. So I think that is the compelling argument for me, and I think that is consistent with our comprehensive master plan. So for me, I don't think that this, with all due respect, appreciate the applicant here, I don't think that it meets with the comprehensive master plan, specifically items 2.1 and 2.3.
Commissioner, if I may, just to kind of draw a similar situation. Is it realistic to go grocery shopping at a car dealership? Because, Commissioner, and of course, you know the respect and esteem I have for you and the work you do. But the bottom line is to draw distinctions between preserving what is just an undeveloped lot versus a major tract of dozens or hundreds of acres in the southern side of the county. It's a little bit like showing up at a car dealership and wanting to do your grocery shopping. One is where one thing is, and the other thing is where the other thing is. Listen, we will probably have park opportunities continue on the northern tier of the county. And I'll tell you what, when we had the 4 properties that we were approaching, that the school district had approached us with, and it made perfect sense to take 2 of those that already had active park development, and we were adding to active park development. That made perfect sense for me. We still have 2 remaining properties. This is one of the properties that is being talked about for approval today. The reality is we have a plat. The design team presented us with a plat from the 1990s of what that property was before our predecessors on the board said, hey, we think we need another school. Okay, our predecessors acted wisely because we didn't know what our school needs were going to be. I'm not going to second guess them. I will say that they acted wisely. But then, that was then, this is now. And now we have Mr. Cosgrove. We have, who is not a lone gunman. He's not a lone staffer. He has an entire staff of planners and financial advisors working with him, saying that, no, there's a better financial use for our schools. And those are needed. And so, to take the metaphor a little further, Our problem is in the southern end of the county, to my neighbors in Castle Rock, to the folks in Castle Pines, Commissioner, the problem is, boy, we just need a couple Yugos. We just need a couple of pickup trucks. And yet, we are awash in grocery stores. So we need those schools down in the southern end now. That's where our school-age population is. I gotta tell you, I'm more than willing to consider other properties that the school district would approach the county to release, where you have adjacent park development already underway. I'm kind of, I want to see the plan. I always want to see the details. I'm in favor of let's add to the parks. Let's use the investment that the people of Douglas County have voted to make in park space, and let's do that work. But when we do have, I hate to say abandoned, because for the folks who are adjacent to that property, you don't feel like that was ever abandoned. That's not how you feel it. But at the same token, that area could have a higher and better use. It was meant to be. We have a design from the 1990s. And I appreciate the applicant bringing forward a design that actually is really close. It's not a vast departure. I think that was good work. I like the fact that we're going to have infrastructure improvements, that I do see the possibility of addressing some of the infrastructure problems that are present, because further infrastructure was never done. So, I don't know. I feel confident in a yes vote on this. Again, I ask the school district, bring us additional properties. Bring them to us. Work with us. Some of them will be perfect for park space. We'll see what we can do to remunerate the school district so that their capital planning can improve, can proceed, and then bring us other properties that, like this, can have a higher and best use, can have a better capital recovery for the school district, because there are parts of this county, yeah, they need schools, they need cars, and they're awash in grocery stores.
Well, Commissioner Teal, you know I always deeply respect and appreciate your thoughtful commentary, and your service on the Castle Rock Town Council was really significant, so I know you have been there on this process. I would just ask the applicant, have there been any community meetings on this? Any meetings convened in the neighborhood about this development?
They showed 10.
Well, there were 10?
Yes.
Okay, 10 community meetings. And I'm seeing the woman in the back shaking her head, so maybe can you help clarify why the citizens don't feel like they were notified of those meetings? How many people attended those meetings?
Oh, it varied. I think the most recent one, we probably had about 10 people in attendance. But we sent notices to all of the adjacent property owners in accordance with Douglas County's requirements. And then I know we've reached out to all of these individuals that spoke today, either by phone or by mail, and some of them we have met with in the past.
Okay. Well, in my review of the packet, I did not see a single letter of support from a citizen. Do you have letters of support from any citizens?
I think there is one.
A letter of support? Okay, maybe I missed that. Do you want to share that? You have one letter?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could find it, it was from Mr. George Wagner, voicing his support with our plan with the removed through street from our plan and having a cul-de-sac at the end.
Removing the through street, okay. Well, based upon the letters that I saw opposing and the people that came today, and this is not a convenient meeting. This is middle of the day, and for our citizens to show up, including a member of our military, sir, thank you for your service. Again, I just want to be the voice of citizens. I'm not seeing significant citizen support, and I think that's consistent with our approval standards. So I've heard my colleagues. I think I understand where they are at, but I'm going to continue to remain a no. Any further discussion on this?
Would you just articulate which one of those approval standards? you're voting no on?
You bet. So the specific legal approval standards would be 403.01, conforms with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Comprehensive Master Plan, and I'm specifically referencing Goal 2.1 and 2.3. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye, and that passes 2-1. With that, our next land use meeting, public hearing, will be held on Tuesday, October 10th, 2023 at 2:30 p.m. We are adjourned.